if you go in and talk to someone with a real retail mindset, the conversation is completely different. If you talk to an agent with a retail mindset, the conversation is completely different. And what you think might be best for the situation isn't always what is going to get the target hit. Working with someone like us makes it easy, and then you can continue to grow and expand. And but you got to start. It's same with anything else. So.
We were in negotiations investing in real estate. They're winning, they're making money.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Real Estate Educators Podcast, where we provide the education you can build on. I am your host, Kevin Amolsch. We are having so much fun with this podcast because we're helping real estate investors and real estate educators. You're out there buying properties, you're buying rentals, fixing and flipping, or if you're providing content to real estate investors, this is the podcast for you. I got a very special guest with me today. I know you're going to get a ton of value. I'm really excited to hear this story. If you do get the value that I suspect you will, please give us a 5-star review and share this with a friend. So with that, Mr. Kurt Byers, coming all the way from Dallas, Texas. We're going to dig into your story a little bit here, man. So you're in charge of, it sounds like a pretty significant portion of the New Western business. It's a pretty big business. Most people know of New Western and the wholesaling operation it's got going on, but you might bring a unique view on this because you're helping with over $1 million in business every month. And that's through your sellers, your realtors, your wholesalers, and your partners. So I'm really excited to get to know you. I know you got a ton of experience. So welcome to the show, man.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you having me on. Looking forward to it.
All right, well, take me back. I do know a little bit about New Western, and I think most of our viewers, well, we're on YouTube also, but viewers and listeners do as well. But before we get into that, how did you get into real estate? I really like to dig into how our guests even decided that this was the path they wanted to pursue.
Yeah, I mean, mine's probably a little different than most. I was actually speech language pathology in college. So I was working with kids with special needs. Ended up getting hired out from a startup doing ear and brain products. And so instead of going to get my PhD, I said, okay, let's do that. And then basically scaled it up, and we're in like 10,000 stores. And they're like, hey, you're really good at sales. You should just do that, because there really wasn't anything else to do there except production at that point. And so I actually went and moved to Denver and worked for Anheuser-Busch doing beer sales. And so I took all of my therapy knowledge and used none of it, and then just sold beer with, to a bunch of bars downtown and throughout Littleton and, most of Colorado. Then left beer sales to go to medical school. And then from medical school, I was there, and then my wife got pregnant. So it was like, should we do medical debt? Probably not. So then I did, chemistry, biology, sales. Then I worked for NBC Sports with their golf technology and marketing. And then I was in Florida, 3 kids, and one of my best friends, Seth Mitchell, he's the VP of Business Intelligence here. There was an opening for kind of the partnerships and marketing stuff. And so he sent it to me. He was like, I know you went to TCU, you talked about moving back. Do you want to come work here? And I was like, don't know a ton about real estate other than, my mother-in-law and my grandma-in-law are both realtors, but I've kind of always been one of those that I pick something up really quickly. I dive in, I learn a ton, and then I just kind of understand the value prop behind it. And so, I've only been doing it a couple of years, but feels like I've been doing it for 10, but I have a lot of really smart people around me. And so I've been able to learn kind of the real estate and the investing side pretty quick. And so that was a long-winded way to say I wasn't born into real estate. I kind of found it through a very odd path. But
yeah, that is an interesting story, because most people are like, well, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, or I went to this free seminar, or my parents were doing it. So you kind of just literally fell into it from a friend. So like special needs kids, which sounds like a tremendous rewarding job, medical, selling beer, which is a little random.
Yeah.
And you're selling Anheuser-Busch product in Coors Country. You know that, right?
See, and I will say, though, that's the good people had to be really good at it, because you could walk into a bar be like, hey, do you want, Anheuser-Busch or one of our other products? And they're like, get out, you know, F you, get out, whatever. And you're like, okay, I'll win you over. It might not be today, but you'd go in there, you grab lunch at the bar, grab a beer, and eventually you win them over just by, being nice and whatever. But it's a lot about the relationship and the beer sales. And so, got a lot of FUs, but also was the top producing person at Anheuser-Busch for Denver and Colorado. So it ended up working out. It just was a little bit more difficult than Coors, that's for sure.
Yeah, I can imagine. So, so you go to the bar and you're trying to build the relationship. You're in Coors country and you're selling Anheuser-Busch. Kurt, what beer do you order when you're having lunch at the bar?
So that's the hardest part is you order, and this is what I always did. I would order a product that wasn't Coors and wasn't one of the typical like best sellers in Denver to show that like the sales that aren't your typical products could get moving, because you order the kegs. And so if you don't run through the keg in a certain amount of time, it's not
Goes
really seen as a
bad.
success. So I'd order because we had breweries from all over. So I'd order a beer from Seattle, or I'd order, a product that typically wouldn't be Coors Country, and just kind of be like, see, people want variety. So
Yeah, oh, that's
yeah,
cool, man. All right, so then you move back down to snowy Texas. I say snowy Texas because you just had some snow in
we
Dallas.
did.
You moved down there and you started slinging real estate. Okay, so tell us more about New Western and what your role is there. And then I want to dig into some of the strategies and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so New Western's a real estate investment marketplace. We've been around since 2008. Done over 17 billion in transactions. And so we're really heavy on volume. We're buying from, pretty much every source you can think of. We work a ton with wholesalers to where, we pretty much just automate their disposition process. We work with agents because we take the houses they don't want to put on the market. We go direct to seller, all sorts of things. So New Western really is a marketplace for people to get residential real estate investment properties. And so we have about 200 plus thousand investors, and those investors are actively working with our disposition team to, find the properties that fit their buy box, kind of understand what their needs are, and then we go out and our acquisitions team will find the properties and get them at a price to where, those investors are going to be able to complete their renovation or their burr, whatever it is. So their exit strategy is up to them. We like to understand all of them, but at the end of the day, we try to support all exit strategies. And then, my role is really centered around business development and partnerships. So we're looking at pretty much all of our national partnerships, our brokerages. Our team does all the wholesaler partnerships. So investor resources like, uh, SaaS products or things that our investors can be, excited about because they partner with New Western. And so a lot of it's really understanding which companies we can provide value to or help them monetize stuff they're not currently monetizing. And so a lot of the partnerships kind of revolve around getting us more revenue and helping them kind of gain a little extra on the side too.
So that when I think of New Western, I think volume, right? Probably pretty thin margin, high volume.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think about the amount someone learns when they work with you. And here's why I say that, Kurt. I've known many, I don't know if you call them agents, but many
Mm-hmm.
salespeople that have worked with the organization. And because of the amount of volume they're doing, they learn a ton about the business. They learn about sales, they learn about real estate investing. And then oftentimes they move on and go out and have pretty darn successful careers, which you probably know. So it's almost like the Redfin model. Like, do a lot of transactions, learn a lot. What is something that you've learned since you've been part of the organization?
I think it's really just um, probably a lot about the real estate investing sector and how different it is from your residential kind of retail real estate. And I think that's probably very obvious to most listeners who are heavy into investing. But I think once you learn that, you understand the language barrier, the language gap between sellers and agents. Because if you go in and talk to someone with a real retail mindset, the conversation is completely different. If you talk to an agent with a retail mindset, the conversation is completely different. And all I had ever known, my wife and I have bought, 3 or 4 houses and done Well, we haven't flipped them. We've done more live-in sales, but every time it's been residential or retail. And so it's just such a different language. The ARVs are different, the comps are different, how you need to understand the pricing is different. And so that really helped me understand how to talk to the different sectors a lot better, because I can go in and talk to a brokerage easy. But if you need to talk to a wholesale outfit or a hard money lender, the conversations are a lot different. And if you can't present your value prop to what they need or how they need to hear it, then it's just going to fall on flat ears and you're not going to get anywhere. So that's probably the biggest thing I've learned from our agents is how to talk, investment versus retail.
So if I was a real estate investor, listening to the Real Estate Educators podcast, and you're telling me I need to learn the language, I might not have the same opportunity you or some of your salespeople have had by the amount of transactions. So where do I go? How do I learn this language that you're telling me I need to know?
I mean, one of the things I did was, obviously I have the disposal of several hundred, high performing agents. But I also listen to, you know, 3 or 4 podcasts a day. If I'm driving, I've read several, I don't know if you want to call them audio books, or it's just, I really tried to dive in any way I possibly could into the world of real estate investing. And then I dove pretty heavily into the world of retail just because I work with a ton of national brokerages. And so I have to be able to understand both. And so a lot of podcasts, a lot of kind of, YouTube videos, a lot of like mastermind classes, whatever you want to call them. I don't take the classes, but I have watched the videos about like some of the replays and stuff. Um, but I'm gonna be honest, a lot of it is just going out and starting those conversations. Like you have to talk to people to understand what they need to hear. And if you're afraid to pick up the phone and call an agent or an investor, like you're not going to get any better at it. Listening to 10 podcasts won't get you 10% better. It'll get you more knowledgeable, but the skill set needs to be transferable with your new language, acquired or whatever. And so to me, it was more just, I was lucky enough to have the agents, but to someone who doesn't, you have to find the resources. So podcasts like yours, and then, agent groups or masterminds, whatever you need to kind of get into that world and then just kind of continue to get better at it.
Yeah, that's interesting how you say that. And I 100% agree with you. And it makes me think of the term, which I'm sure you're familiar with, Kurt. It's fake it until you make it. You've heard
Yeah.
this? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know that I totally subscribe to that. So I was buying properties when I was 21, 22, 23 years old. And the way I was doing it was much like some of your wholesalers that you work with, going into the living room and trying to negotiate directly with the seller. Um, and if you're trying to fake it when you make it in that living room, it could quite literally turn into a disaster. So I was like, just what you just said, you have to talk to people. Yes, that's 100% accurate. And I sort of think, well, if you don't understand it, just tell them you don't understand it and
Yep.
then work together. You'd be surprised at how many people, sellers, for the listener, you'd be surprised how many sellers want to help you if you're honest and open like that.
Yep.
That builds credibility. And I say this quite often. You don't need credit and cash to buy properties, but you do need credibility. And
Yep.
being honest and willing to work with them provides that. I don't know
Yeah.
why I
Well,
just went
because I
off on
mean,
that little tangent, but
no, but it's such an important tangent because, you know, I think throughout my career, especially when you switch roles a lot, you come in and you're expected to have those conversations. And if you just say, I'm newer, or that's not something I'm well read on enough to give you an answer, and I'd rather provide you the right answer from someone who knows than give you the wrong answer and ruin the relationship. And people definitely respect that, because if maybe if you're a PhD and something, they're like, yeah, you should probably know, but even they don't know everything. So being honest about the fact that you want to provide them better help than what you can presently give them, I think is, one of the best ways to go about it.
it's so easy too. Like,
Yeah.
okay, maybe I don't really totally understand this piece. What do you think? And then they'll
Yeah.
start talking. It's so
Well,
easy.
it's sometimes better to get them talking. I mean, so much of what I've learned is just, people love to answer questions and be helpful. And if you can do it conversation style without it being like an interview of like, well, tell me this. It's you kind of hear their story through learning. And so if you can get a seller talking or an agent talking about what they need and you can solve their problem, I mean, that transaction is so much smoother.
Oh, 100%. They want to help you. Let them help you, right?
Yeah.
Cool. So I want to get back to the beer real quick because I want to
Mhm.
hear what you learned in beer sales that has helped you in real estate.
I mean, one of it was the perseverance of that type of market. But the other one was what is probably, or what you think might be best for the situation isn't always what is going to get the target hit. So, like for me, there were certain things where I knew this bar, you know, I felt I could sell in really well, but coming from either, my boss or a new product, you needed to shift the conversation to, well, Anheuser-Busch would like this product at that placement. And so, like, sometimes say same way, you really want to do a fix and flip, but the market's telling you you need to hold on to this property because it's a rental. Is like I wanted to go in and sell a barrel of Busch Light or Bud Light or whatever, but they really wanted, a beer that's more craft, whatever, and it might not be their demographic that's best for the bar, but I need to find a way to explain the value of why that beer will be better than a barrel of Bud Light, which they're currently asking for. So I think it was, there was probably 400 products we had, and just knowing enough about all of them to be able to be intelligent enough to have the conversation and then understand that you're not always the one driving what's needed. And so if you can't take outside counsel of what, the company needs or the investor needs or the seller needs, then it's going to be tough to get things done because you have to be able to, kind of take input and give it a better output. So,
Yeah. So it's like leave the ego at the door, right?
yeah.
Yeah. My business coach always tells me one of the key values for him and what he tries to instill on businesses is curiosity. So stay curious. You should be listening more than you're talking. And that is especially true in sales. And that's what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because otherwise, if you go in and you're selling yourself or whatever so much that you don't understand the seller's need, then I mean, they're not gonna like the conversation. It's a lot like a SaaS platform. It's like if you build something people don't want because you like it, it's not gonna sell.
Exactly.
People have needs, meet the need, and your product's gonna do a lot better.
Yeah, it's like the interview question. I'm holding up a pin in front of the camera for you that are just listening, but it's like the interview question where you hold this up and you say, "All right, sell me this," right? And then some people will go right into all the benefits of owning a pin and how smooth it writes and how easy it is to click the pin open and close and blah blah blah, whatever it is. How comfortable in your hand. That's not how you sell it, right? It's like, well, how do I know you even need the pin?
Yeah.
Right, let's find out what you need first, and then, right. So step one, discovering needs, huh?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's something I've always felt like I've been able to do is kind of paint a story of like the value of from their point of view. Like what is their day going to be easier for? What is their month going to be more profitable? And I'm not painting the story of here's my product, here's why I'm good at selling it. It's, here's the product, here's the reason, here's how your life is going to look with it. Same with the pen. It's like, you know, why do you need it? Okay, well, the reason this pin is the reason and then you go into it. But it's like
Exactly.
you paint the story of what their value needs are, and it's much better than what you're selling. So,
Yeah, and that's going to be very true in real estate investing. Whether you're working with motivated sellers, whether you're working with buyers, agents, you're negotiating with everybody. Whether it's
mhm.
buying from a wholesaler like New Western, there's still negotiation going on there, I assume. I know your volume is really high and you don't always negotiate.
Yeah.
But I think just having that skill is important as an investor. This episode is brought to you by Pine Financial Group. Pine Financial is a private lender specializing in short-term rehab lending to real estate investors. Got a property that needs some love? We can help. We are able to offer funding solutions because we raise private money from individual investors. With more than 15 years of experience, Pine offers passive investors an alternative that provides stability, consistency, and security to your portfolio. If you like real estate but want to avoid the ups and downs and effort, a Pine mortgage fund could be a perfect fit for you. Accredited investors will experience an 8% preferred return and profit sharing. Diversify your portfolio out of Wall Street and into Main Street with a Pine Financial Group mortgage fund. Get more information at pinefinancialgroup.com. That's pinefinancialgroup.com. All right, so let's get into more about working with New Western. So I've purchased a handful of properties, so I will say that, and they've done very well. Okay.
Nice.
And what I've seen is the margins have gotten rather thin. So I haven't seen anything come across my desk that's been worth pursuing from New Western. So I hate to just throw it out on the spot, but what, like, as an investor working with you, like, what can you say about the margins thinning, and why should we still work with you? Like, overcome the objection.
Yeah, I mean, I think of the objection, if it's about the margin or the margin thinning, why you'd still work with us is, we're on this investor side. If you're buying from us, you're essentially able to go about everything you're doing without any of the time or resources that New Western has to get that property to your desk. We're able to, spend a lot of money, have a lot of agents, boots on the ground, and we're able to go and find properties that are typically not as findable at the prices they are. And so, I think the margins thinning is just a matter of the market. I think there's a lot of people that are probably dealing with similar issues, as just as far as, the current market conditions. But, with how many houses we do and how many kind of connections we have and the reach we have, I think it's going to be pretty hard to find what we're doing without spending a ton of time. And, time is money, money is, whatever. But again, it really is a matter of, time and expertise as far as where we're going to find the houses and the markets, because we know down to the zip code, the bottom half of that neighborhood. Well, this street actually has trouble with that, so we know a lot of that data that most people don't. And so, combined time, expertise, and data, I think it's, um, sticking with us is probably your best option out there.
Are you guys seeing any slowdown in buyer activity because of that?
We haven't. I mean, our last quarter is pretty large compared to a typical winter. I know that, some of the buyer activity across the board has been up a little, but we've had a very healthy year, and when a
Good.
lot of people didn't. So
That's great. Are you still doing the $10,000 non-refundable?
depends on the price of the house. So and it depends on the market. So I live in Dallas, so I know that one better, but it's usually the non-refundable depending on the price point. So either 7,500, 10,000, or I think maybe 12,500 for the much higher price ones.
So you have all of these different channels that you bring in properties, wholesalers, realtors. You probably do a lot of direct marketing and talking directly to sellers. And so you have these leads coming in. Well, you identify one that has the margin you want so that you can mark it up a little bit and exit to a real estate developer or real estate investor that's going to do a rehab.
Mhm.
So you have a little markup, but the way the transaction works, I believe, is you actually close on the property with cash, and
Mhm.
then you resell it to your real estate investor. And I think there might even be a piece there where you provide some financing, or there was talk about that. So do I have that right? And then elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, so we do the double closing model, to where, we have the licensed agents, we take it to title, we close on the property, and then we do resell it to the investor based on how they'd like the purchase to go. So it's, if they want to do cash, great, cash is easy. But we also have, a lending arm, Sherman Bridge, which is a marketplace of lenders. Depending on your profile, whatever fits best, you can do that, or you can use outside lenders as well. So yeah, I mean, we do the hard money loans, or we do cash, and essentially you know close on the property, and then that same day you're closing with us on the second side of it. So
Okay. So why the non-refundable? Like, help me understand why there's no flexibility if someone can't close.
I think usually it's because we've put up a very similar amount on the front end, and so um, once it's past that period, we've lost our money as well. So that's kind of recouping the cost of our losses. But I will, as our conversation a little earlier, I don't. That's probably a decision that was made a long time ago, and probably in the from whether the C-suite or whatever. But that is something I'm not entirely sure why it's that way, but it has been that way for many years. So
Yeah. So if there's one knock, man, that's it. You probably know that. So when we have our clients looking at new Western deals, we're always like, be very, very careful, because there is zero flexibility on that 10 grand. And if you decide you find something you don't like during your diligence period, can't help you. So
yeah.
that's been a tough one, and it's been one that has made it a little tough for us to work together, to be quite candid with you. So
Okay.
if there's any poll with the C-suite, Kurt, ask them if they could be a bit more flexible on that one.
Okay. Yeah. I'll see what I can do. Yeah. I'd love to, figure out the solution to make that, a little better so that we could work together more. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And as I said, I have purchased a handful, and I know a lot of our clients, the more sophisticated clients, were like, yes, go. It's the newer folks that we try to steer away, only because it's so dangerous. But the sophisticated ones, we've done a lot of deals together. I don't know if you know that, but we've hundreds probably. So
Okay.
it's been good.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's good to hear. And yeah, we always, do your due diligence, make sure so yeah, I mean, I think that aspect is obviously, we don't want anyone going in and not knowing what they're getting their hands into. We definitely want you to have the knowledge to be able to comp it and know what you're getting into. So that definitely helps.
Yeah, it's just hard when we get the phone call, like, then there's nothing I could do, man. I was like, I tried to tell you on the front end, and you went and did the 10,000 anyway.
Yeah.
Sorry. And it leaves a bad taste in everyone's mouth. So that's just been a challenge for us. But all right, moving on from that. I know we don't have a ton of time here, but I want to try to pull out some nuggets of information of what you've learned. What can we do to help our real estate investor listeners? So if they're wanting to buy from wholesalers, give me some advice on what should they do when they're considering working with someone like a New Western.
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest thing you can do is go in with kind of a plan, and your knowledge base is, we'll help you as much as we can, but um, there's a lot of people out there trying to find properties. And so um, being knowledgeable on the front end, being knowledgeable about the comps, the area, and if you know what you want, don't just, because someone says, it's a slam and deal, but it's an hour away, and you don't want to have to work that project an hour away, and it's not something that you want to comp, or you're comfortable in that neighborhood. Like, be confident going in and knowing what you want, stick to your prices you need. Obviously, with the market and the margins, like, there's probably some, back and forth, but yeah, I think it's just a matter of understanding what you need and the price you need it at, and you know, having the plan in place. Because a lot of people, I don't think, plan enough for some of these big projects.
I think that's great advice. And I mentioned I've bought a handful. I did exactly that. I was buying in certain communities I knew really well. And when I saw the email come in that there's a unit available in this complex, for example, I don't even need to go look at it. I know exactly what it's worth. I know exactly what it's going to rent for. Yes, I'm buying it. So
Yeah.
within 30 minutes, there's a contract between us, right? I already know it. So I think that knowing the neighborhood, knowing the comps when you're working with wholesalers is very good advice.
Mhm.
Any other pieces of advice?
I mean, yeah, that's probably my biggest one. But I would also say,
Get your
if
funding,
you
maybe.
what?
Get your funding lined up.
Yeah, funding lined up is always helpful. The other thing I'd say is, if you're working with a New Western or another wholesaler, and you have those neighborhoods, or you have whatever, I tell them, like, I have 3 projects I want to do. Can you find me 3 more homes in, XYZ neighborhood or zip code? And then you can kind of use them as a resource to find more homes, not just the homes that come across your email inbox. I mean, I know our team would love to, get that direct feedback, and then we'll have our acquisitions team go try and hunt that. So
That's awesome. So if I'm new to the business and I want to be a wholesaler, you can help with the disposition, you said.
Mhm.
So let's pretend, and this is a great way to get started with very little or actually zero risk. If you do it right, there's no risk in wholesaling. So, which is probably why you have the $10,000 non-refundable. But if you want to eliminate risk, and I want to be a wholesaler, but I don't have a buyer's list, how do we work together?
Yeah. So I mean, essentially, and that is very common. That's, we work with a lot of wholesalers that either don't have the buyers list or want to be in, 10 markets instead of one, and we'll just be their boots on the ground. But yeah, if you're a new wholesaler and you found the leads, you've got the homeowner, you've got your contract, reaching out to us, we can essentially, we'll let you know where we can be. And then we handle the entire disposition side. We'll handle the title, the EMD, the escrow, we handle the buyers, so it really makes it easy for wholesalers to either expand with us or start out in wholesaling. Growing a buyers list is very difficult. That's one of the things that makes New Western so successful is we have the buyers list already. And so, the wholesaling aspect, very little risk, but it's not the easiest thing to do. So if you can not have to worry about the disposition side and just use us as your disposition arm, essentially your sales team, we can make you do a lot more volume than you currently are.
I agree with you again wholeheartedly. It's wholesaling is very difficult. I say no risk. That is true if you do it right, but it's not easy. You have to actually work. So
Yeah.
so many people they don't want to actually work, man. They
Yeah.
see real estate investment, they see it on TV, and they're like, "Oh, I'm just going to become rich." Well, it's not quite like that. But
Yeah.
one thing, just to I guess piggyback, if I use that word, I hear people get stalled as they're getting started because they're so worried about their buyer list. I do hear this frequently. And it's like such a strange thing to get hung up on and why you're not having the success you deserve because there's people like you and we have a list of buyers too. And look, I lend money on real estate. I can probably sell it for you if it's a good deal. So there's people like New Western out there that will sell the property for you. Don't get hung up on a buyers. Go find the deal. That's where your money is made.
Yeah. Because I mean, if you get a good deal, you're going to get a buyer. We see it all the time where it's like, on one hand, there's a lot of people that come to us because they're running out of EMD or their due diligence period, and they're like, "We'll give you guys a shot," and then we sell it. But that's because we have the giant buyers list.
Yeah.
But again, like there's resources out there as far as being able to, talk to someone like us, talk to a lender, figure things out. But it is difficult to build a buyers list. But I mean, it's the same as like, why wait till the perfect condition to get started if like just get started, start your real estate venture, and working with someone like us makes it easy. And then you can continue to grow and expand and, but you got to start. It's, same with anything else. So,
Yeah. The only one outside of your buyers list that just drives me crazy, Kurt, is, well, what about my asset protection plan? Well,
yeah.
you're just getting, you don't even have any assets to protect. You're just starting. Like, let's focus on being successful, and then this other stuff will come later, right?
Yeah.
All right, man. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to go through my notes and what I've learned from the last 30, 35 minutes we've had together. And then what I want you to do is tell me where I'm missing, what you would like to elaborate on, anything like that. And then we're going to close out with contact information and one final piece of advice for the listener. All right,
Okay.
here we go. So we started out by talking about what you've learned in real estate, coming from your background and getting into the New Western world where you dove talk about head first. It's not a deal a year kind of thing. You went into $1 million per month. So you really did dive in. And your advice was to learn the language. There's a big difference between investor and retail. Listen to podcasts and books while you're driving. So as I heard, don't be listening to the music and the sports radio, which I get into a habit of doing. Listen to things that are going to actually help improve your career. Talk to people. Don't be afraid to talk to people. And we talked a little bit about faking it till you make it, or just being honest and open. What you think is not always real. What you think is not always real. That's what I wrote down. And that came when we were talking about going into a situation, going into the bar in your example, and thinking they need a keg that they don't. So listen, be curious. That's the key in sales, and no ego. Effort to get your no effort to get to your desk. What does that mean? I don't know what I wrote down there. I wrote no effort to get to your desk. Save time. Oh, here's where that came in. Why work with New Western or any wholesaler? And what's the value proposition? What do they bring? What value do they bring to have deals that maybe a little bit thinner of a margin? And the answer is, well, you don't need to work. The deals just come right to your desk. So I didn't share this with you, but I've done hundreds of transactions as a real estate investor, and then I'm also a private lender. So at this point, we're 2,500 transactions, something like that. So nowhere near you guys, but I've seen a lot. And what I could tell you is I got to a point where I didn't want to market for sellers. I didn't want to go out and meet with them and spend the time in the living room. That was all hugely valuable when I was getting started. But at some point, you don't want to work that hard. It's not scalable to do that. So having deals come to you is hugely valuable. Always start with the plan when you're working with the wholesalers. You got to know what you want. You don't want to drive an hour across town to do some diligence when you don't even know if you want to buy it. Tell your wholesaler what your buy box is. That's a good piece of advice there. They could sell your properties for you. They have buyers lists. So New Western's no exception. There's probably the largest buyer list out there, quite honestly, but any wholesaler will have a buyer's list. So work together. It's not competition. It's very much cooperative. And then I want to make sure I get you. Well, before I do that, tell me, how did I do on my notes?
It was good. Yeah, I liked it.
Anything that we should be adding there before a final piece of advice?
No, I think that was good. Yeah, it was a good recap. Yeah.
All right, man. Well, let's do this. Contact information. How can we work with you? What are you looking for? How can you help our listener? And then your final piece of advice before we close it down.
Yeah, I mean, you can go to newwestern.com, invest with us. We're on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. You can email me, Kurt.Byers@newwestern. But I mean, really the biggest thing we're always looking for is more properties and more investors. So if you're trying to sell, you're trying to buy, that's what we're here for. And if you're trying to partner, I'm the guy. So we can set you up locally or nationally. And the one piece of advice, I think, honestly, it's probably the get started piece. I think there's the notion that, everyone successful is, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 doors, but we have a ton of people every year that buy from us that it's their first or second house. So just get started, learn, have a plan, but learn. And then the second time you do it, third time, 10, whatever, your plan's a lot better. So yeah, my advice is just to get started. Don't try and time it perfectly because very rarely does that work.
Yeah, I love it. If you want to build a portfolio, you got to start. You got to actually close on something. Love it. That's actually, I do this little top 10 mistakes I see investors make in one of the presentations I do. And that is the number one mistake.
Yeah.
By far. Okay, so we got your contact information. It was kurt.byers@newwestern.com, Byers, Byers. And I will say this, Kurt, I know, well, we had a little bit of trouble because of the snowstorm, but I know that we had to work together to make this happen. And I know you're giving up a bit of your time, and I know you're super busy, $1 million a month in volume. You got a lot going on. So thank you so much for giving me 30, 40 minutes of your time. I really, really appreciate it. I know the listeners do as well. And for the listeners, you could be listening to lots of different podcasts. We're competing in that space, right? And you chose to listen to the Real Estate Educators podcast. And I am so grateful for that. I hope you got some value. You learned something in the last 30 minutes. If you did, please 5-star review, share with a friend, and I hope you make this day a great one. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. If you did, please be sure to follow and leave us a review. Oh yeah, and tell a friend.